On Thanksgiving, I saw the family photo album, every picture of me ripped out completely. No one mentioned it. Next day, I handed Mom an envelope and said, "Open it later." She didn't wait. Dad turned white. My finger traced the jagged edge where I should have been. Christmas 2009, the trip to Yellowstone, my high school graduation, all there, except me. Carefully excised from existence, like a surgical removal of a tumor. Clean cuts. Deliberate. Nothing accidental about the way my face had been eliminated from every memory. I closed the burgundy leather album and returned it to the coffee table, my hands steadier than they had any right to be. The living room hummed with the familiar chaos of Thanksgiving, Uncle Pete arguing politics, cousins laughing too loudly at inside jokes, my sister Vanessa holding court by the fireplace. No one noticed me examining the album. No one saw my face when I realized what they'd done. Mom bustled in with another tray of appetizers. "Daniel. You're not mingling," she said, her voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "Everyone's asking where you've been." I doubted that very much. "Just looking at old photos," I replied, tapping the album cover. Something flickered across her face. Concern? Panic? It disappeared so quickly I might have imagined it. "Oh, that old thing," she waved dismissively. "I've been meaning to organize it better." Organize it better. As if removing every trace of your son was simple housekeeping. "It's organized perfectly," I said, meeting her eyes. "Very thorough." She didn't hold my gaze. Instead, she thrust the tray toward me. "Take these to the dining room, will you? Your father's about to carve the turkey." I took the tray silently, watching her hurry back to the kitchen without waiting for a response. Classic Mom, always moving, always directing, never lingering long enough for a real conversation. In the dining room, Dad stood at the head of the table, carving knife poised over a glistening turkey. Vanessa sat at his right hand, her perfect husband Nathan beside her, their twin boys fidgeting in booster seats. The Golden family. Complete. Whole. Without me. "There he is." Dad boomed with performative cheer. "The prodigal returns." Everyone laughed like he'd said something clever. I set down the tray and took my assigned seat, far end, next to Great Aunt Millie, who was mostly deaf and smelled like peppermints. "How's the city treating you, son?" Dad asked, slicing through white meat with surgical precision. "Fine," I said. "Busy." "Still at that tech startup thing?" He managed to make a six-figure job sound like I was selling pencils on a street corner. "Same company, yes. We just secured another round of funding." Good, he nodded absently, clearly not listening. He turned to Nathan. "How's the hospital expansion coming along? Breaking ground in spring, right?" And just like that, I was dismissed. Forgotten. As always. I watched them across the table, the perfect nuclear family. Dad beaming at Nathan, Mom fussing over the twins, Vanessa glowing with self-satisfaction. I was a footnote at my own family dinner. An obligation. A loose end they hadn't quite managed to tie off. The conversation flowed around me. Promotions, school accomplishments, vacation plans. No one asked about my life, my accomplishments, my plans. When I offered information, it was acknowledged with polite nods before someone quickly changed the subject. I shouldn't have been surprised. This had been happening for years, long before I moved away, long before the incident they refused to discuss. But something about seeing that album, seeing the physical manifestation of my erasure, broke something loose inside me. After dessert, while everyone migrated to the living room for coffee, I slipped away to my old bedroom, now the guest room, stripped of all evidence I'd lived there for 18 years. I removed the envelope from my bag. Heavy cream paper, expensive, official looking. I ran my thumb over the seal, wondering if I was making a mistake. But the image of those torn photos steeled my resolve. When I returned downstairs, Mom was in the kitchen alone, packaging leftovers into containers. "Need help?" I asked. She startled. "Oh. Daniel. No, I've got it under control." Of course she did. Mom always had everything under control, except me. "I've got to head out soon," I said. "Early meeting tomorrow." Relief flashed across her face before she composed herself. "So soon? Well, it was lovely having you. Do you want some turkey to take home?" "No, but I have something for you." I held out the envelope. "Open it later, when everyone's gone." She took it, frowning slightly. "What is this?" "Just some paperwork I thought you should have." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Mom never liked surprises, they disrupted her carefully orchestrated life. "I'll wait until later," she said, setting it aside on the counter. But I knew she wouldn't. Mom had never delayed gratification in her life. Sure enough, as I gathered my coat from the front closet, I heard paper tearing in the kitchen. By the time I returned, she was halfway through the documents, her face drained of color. "What is this?" she whispered, fingers trembling against the heavy stationery. "Exactly what it looks like." Dad appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay? We're about to play charades." Mom held out the papers wordlessly. He took them, puzzled, then began reading. I watched the transformation, confusion, disbelief, understanding, fear, play across his face like scenes in a silent film. "This is a mistake," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "No mistake." I took back the envelope, now empty. "DNA doesn't lie." Mom sank into a kitchen chair. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter? I've suspected for years. You've always treated me differently. Like I didn't quite belong." "That's ridiculous," Dad snapped, but his face had gone the color of wet cement. "Is it? Look me in the eye and tell me I'm wrong." I gestured toward the living room, where laughter erupted over something Vanessa had said. "Tell me why I've always been the afterthought. Why my achievements never mattered. Why you cut me out of every family photo." "That album," Mom began weakly. "Save it." I held up my hand. "I don't need explanations anymore. I have answers." Dad set the papers on the counter with exaggerated care, like they might explode. "What do you want?" Such a revealing question. Not "I'm sorry" or "let's talk about this." Just "what you want?" As if this was a transaction, a problem to be managed. "Nothing," I said. "I have everything I need now." "Daniel, please," Mom's voice cracked. "We should discuss this privately. We've had 28 years to discuss it. You never wanted to." I buttoned my coat. "I just thought you should know that I know. That's all." "You can't just drop this bomb and walk away," Dad said, anger finally breaking through his shock. I laughed, a sound without humor. "Watch me." In the living room, Vanessa was in the middle of an elaborate mime, the others calling out guesses. No one looked up as I passed. I paused at the doorway, taking in the scene one last time, the family I'd spent my life trying to be part of, the approval I'd never stopped chasing. "Goodbye," I said, though I doubt anyone heard. Outside, snow had begun to fall, fat, lazy flakes drifting through the yellow glow of streetlights. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the sharp winter air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 3 messages, all from Rachel. "How's it going? Surviving? Call me when you're free." Rachel, who'd encouraged me to come today. Rachel, who believed families could heal. Rachel, who didn't yet understand what I'd just done. I climbed into my car but didn't start the engine. Through the front window, I could see movement in the kitchen, Mom gesturing frantically, Dad pacing, Vanessa now joining them, her face pinched with concern. The bomb had detonated. There would be fallout, explanations, perhaps even apologies. But none of it would change the central truth I'd uncovered. I'd never been their son. And perhaps I never needed to be. 6 hours after leaving my parents' house, I stood in my apartment staring at the city lights blurring through snow and condensation on the windows. My phone had been buzzing incessantly, calls from Mom, from Dad, even from Vanessa. I'd silenced it after the 3rd voicemail. Rachel was curled on my couch, a glass of wine in hand, watching me with careful eyes. "So they know," she said. Not a question. "They know." And nothing. I sank into the armchair across from her. "I left." She nodded slowly. "How did it feel?" "Like." I searched for the words. "Like putting down something heavy I've been carrying my whole life." Rachel had been the one who'd first suggested the DNA test. Not because she suspected anything, but because she worked for one of those ancestry companies and got employee discounts. A Christmas gift, she'd called it. "Discover your heritage, Danny. Might be fun." Fun wasn't exactly how I'd describe the moment I saw the results. "They're going to want to explain," Rachel said gently. "There's nothing to explain. Biology is biology." "You know that's not true. Family is complicated." I did know. Despite everything, I knew. The test had simply confirmed a lifetime of subtle clues, my darker complexion compared to Vanessa's fair skin, my height when everyone else in the family barely cleared 5 feet 8 inches, the hushed arguments I'd overheard as a child that stopped the moment I entered a room. And then there were the pictures. Family photos where I was positioned slightly apart, my mother's hand never quite resting on my shoulder. School plays where they arrived late and left early. Graduations where their applause seemed performative rather than proud. "Do you think Vanessa knows?" Rachel asked. "No. On this, I was certain. She's always been oblivious to anything that doesn't directly affect her." Rachel set down her wine. "Will you tell her?" "That's not my responsibility." "Danny. Why should I care about protecting their secret? They've been lying to me my entire life." "I'm not saying you should protect them. I'm saying maybe Vanessa deserves to know too." I hadn't considered that. Vanessa, for all her golden child perfection, might also be a victim of our parents' deception. The thought was uncomfortable. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time. I declined the call. "You'll have to talk to them eventually," Rachel said. "Do I?" "You're the one who gave them the DNA results. You clearly wanted some kind of conversation." I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated because she was right. I hadn't just walked away with my discovery. I'd confronted them. I'd wanted. What, exactly? Confirmation? Contrition? Some explanation that would suddenly make sense of my entire childhood? "I wanted them to know that I know," I said finally. "That's all." Rachel looked skeptical. And now what? Now nothing. I go on with my life. Just like that? What else is there? She leaned forward. Danny, you have a chance here. To understand. To maybe even build something new. Build what? A relationship with people who've been lying to me for 28 years? Who literally cut me out of family photos. Maybe there's more to the story. Like what? What possible excuse could they have? Rachel didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was gentle. I don't know. But don't you want to find out? The truth was, I did. And I hated myself for it. I didn't call them back that night, or the next day. By Saturday, the voicemails had become desperate. Mom crying, Dad demanding, Vanessa confused and hurt. I listened to each one, trying to feel something other than a distant, hollow ache. Sunday morning, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Vanessa, hair perfectly styled even at 8 a.m., expression set in determination. I considered not answering, but she'd always been stubborn. She'd camp outside my door all day if necessary. What do you want? I asked, opening the door but blocking the entrance. What do I want? She pushed past me into the apartment. I want to know why you dropped a nuclear bomb on Thanksgiving and then disappeared. I want to know why Mom hasn't stopped crying for 3 days. I want to know what the hell is going on. Ask them. I did. She threw up her hands. All they'll say is that it's complicated and they need to talk to you first. Dad looks like he's aged 10 years since Thursday. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of satisfaction at that. Why are you here, Vanessa? She dropped onto my couch, suddenly deflated. Because you're my brother and something is very wrong. Brother. The word hit differently now. Half-brother, I corrected. Technically. Her head snapped up. What are you talking about? So they hadn't told her. Interesting. The DNA test I gave Mom on Thanksgiving. It proves Dad isn't my biological father. Vanessa stared at me, mouth slightly open. That's not possible. Science suggests otherwise. But that would mean. Her face went through a rapid series of calculations. That would mean Mom had an affair, yes. Or some arrangement they never bothered to share with me. She shook her head, rejecting the information. There has to be a mistake. There's no mistake. It explains everything, why they've always favored you, why Dad can barely look me in the eye, why I'm constantly treated like an inconvenient houseguest rather than family. That's not true. They don't favor me. I laughed bitterly. Vanessa, open your eyes. They've been erasing me for years. Did you even notice the photo album? Every picture of me, gone. What photo album? The one on the coffee table. The family album. Someone went through and removed every photo that had me in it. She frowned. That's insane. Why would anyone do that? Ask them. I will. She stood abruptly. This is crazy. There has to be an explanation. Oh, there's an explanation. Just not one anybody wants to talk about. She reached the door, then turned back. We're still family, Daniel. Whatever this is, whatever happened, that hasn't changed. But it had. It had changed the moment I saw those DNA results. It had changed even earlier, perhaps, the first time I felt like an outsider in my own home, the first time I noticed Dad's affection for Vanessa never quite extended to me. After she left, I poured myself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, watching Sunday morning unfold on the street below. People walking dogs, carrying groceries, living normal lives untouched by the revelation that had shattered mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Vanessa just called. We need to talk. All of us. Please. Followed immediately by one from Dad. This has gone far enough. Family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Be there. Not a request, a command. Typical Dad. I texted back, I'll come on one condition, honesty. Complete honesty. Dad's response came quickly, fine. At precisely 7:05 p.m., I knocked on the door of my parents' house. A tactical decision, late enough to make a point, but not so late they could accuse me of rudeness. Dad answered, his face tight with stress. You came, he said, relief evident despite his attempt at composure. I said I would. The dining room had been transformed in the way it only was for serious family discussions, good china, crystal water glasses, candles. As if formality could somehow soften the blow of painful truths. Mom sat at one end of the table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Vanessa occupied her usual spot, Nathan absent for once. Dad gestured for me to sit. No Nathan tonight? I asked Vanessa as I took my seat. I asked him to stay home with the boys. This is family only. Family only. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom cleared her throat. Daniel, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, I interrupted. I'm clarified. What does that mean? Dad demanded. It means I finally understand why things have always been the way they are. Why I've never quite fit. Why you've been slowly erasing me from family history. We haven't been erasing you, Mom protested. The photo album says otherwise. A thick silence fell. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. The photo album, Dad said slowly, was Vanessa's project. I turned to my sister, betrayal fresh and sharp. You? She shook her head frantically. No. I mean, yes, I was organizing the photos, but I never removed any of you. I was putting together a surprise anniversary album for Mom and Dad. I took some photos from the family album temporarily to scan them. Every photo with me in it? No. I don't know what you're talking about. I took maybe a dozen photos total. We all stared at each other in confusion. Show me, I said finally. Vanessa disappeared upstairs, returning moments later with a sleek black album. She set it on the table and opened it. There I was, on page after page. Birthday parties, holidays, graduations. Me and Vanessa building sandcastles at the beach. Me on Dad's shoulders at a baseball game. Family portraits where I stood firmly between my parents, my mother's arm around my waist. I don't understand, I said, looking back up at them. The album in the living room. Let me see, Mom said, rising from her chair. We all followed her to the living room. The burgundy album sat exactly where I'd left it on Thanksgiving. Mom opened it, flipping through the pages with increasing confusion. This isn't. These aren't. She looked up, bewildered. Someone's removed photos, but I didn't do it. Dad took the album, examining it with a frown. Who would do this? We all looked at each other, the question hanging in the air. It doesn't matter, I said finally. The album isn't the point. The DNA test is the point. The momentary distraction evaporated, tension rushing back into the room. My parents exchanged another loaded glance. Let's go back to the dining room, Dad said. Once seated, Mom took a deep breath. Daniel, there's something we should have told you a long time ago. Something we've been protecting you from. Protecting me? I laughed without humor. From what, the truth? From pain, she said quietly. From a story that isn't as simple as you might think. Dad reached for her hand. It was never about not wanting you, son. Son. The word felt like a lie now. Just tell me, I said. No more games. Mom nodded, tears already forming. You were born in 1995. Your father and I had been married for 3 years. We'd been trying for a baby, but... She looked at Dad. We couldn't conceive, he continued. We tried everything, fertility treatments, specialists. Nothing worked. So what, you used a donor? I asked. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Why keep it secret? They exchanged another look, and I realized with a sinking feeling that the story was going somewhere else entirely. Not exactly, Mom said. Your father has a brother, Richard. Uncle Rich. Dad's younger brother who lived in Seattle. Who I saw maybe once every 5 years. Who always sent expensive but impersonal gifts at Christmas. What about him? Dad's jaw tightened. Richard and I. We don't get along. Haven't for years. I know that. What does it have to do with me? Mom took over again. Richard was married to a woman named Elena. In 1994, Elena discovered she was pregnant, but by then, their marriage was already falling apart. A cold feeling began to spread through my chest. What are you saying? Richard left her, Dad said, voice hard. Just walked out, despite knowing she was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for fatherhood. Elena was alone, scared, with no family in the country, Mom continued. She reached out to us. We'd always been kind to her, even when Richard wasn't. She was struggling financially, emotionally. We helped her through the pregnancy, Dad said. Took her to doctor's appointments, made sure she had what she needed. I stared at them, pieces falling into place. And then what? Mom's eyes filled with tears. Then she died, Daniel. Complications during childbirth. She didn't make it. The room spun slightly. And the baby? The baby lived, Dad said softly. A healthy boy. Me, I whispered. Mom nodded, tears streaming now. You. Richard wanted nothing to do with you. He signed away his parental rights immediately. We'd grown so close to Elena, had been preparing for your arrival alongside her. It felt like you were already ours. So we adopted you, Dad said. Legally, properly. You became our son in every way that matters. But not biologically, I said. Richard is my brother, Dad countered. We share DNA. You are my blood, Daniel. Just once removed. Vanessa was staring at her lap, silent tears falling. This was news to her too, I realized. All these years, she'd believed we were full siblings. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Why keep it secret? At first, we planned to tell you when you were older, Mom said. But as time passed, it became harder to find the right moment. We were afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd feel unwanted, Dad admitted. That you'd think we loved you less somehow. That you'd want to find Richard, who wanted nothing to do with you. We made a mistake, Mom whispered. We thought we were protecting you, but we were really protecting ourselves. From a difficult conversation. From potential pain. I sat back, trying to absorb it all. Not what I'd expected, not an affair, not a secret donor, but something more complex. A rescue, an adoption, a choice. So who removed the photos? I asked, circling back to what had started all this. More uncomfortable glances. We think. Dad began, then faltered. We think it might have been Richard, Mom finished. He was here last month, for the first time in years. He asked to see family photos. Said he was working on some genealogy project. Richard, I repeated flatly. The uncle who never calls. Who I barely know. Who apparently is actually my biological father. He's been troubled lately, Dad said carefully. Drinking again. Talking about the past, about regrets. You think he's what, trying to erase me from the family? A little late for that, isn't it? He's already erased himself from my life. We don't know, Mom admitted. But the timing fits. And he had access to the house while we were at the charity gala that weekend. I shook my head, overwhelmed. This is a lot. I know, Mom reached across the table, not quite touching me. And I'm so sorry. We should have told you the truth years ago. Vanessa finally looked up. So we're cousins? Not siblings? You're siblings, Dad said firmly. In every way that counts. I looked at Vanessa, really looked at her. My sister. My cousin. The golden child who, it turned out, hadn't been favored because she was biological, but simply because. Because why? Because she was easier? Because she didn't carry the complicated baggage I did? I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. No one tried to stop me as I walked out to the backyard. The night was cold, my breath creating clouds in the darkness. I sat on the old swing set, the one Dad had built when Vanessa and I were kids. He'd spent weeks on it, making sure it was perfect, safe. I remembered him lifting me onto the swing for the first time, his hand steady on my back as he pushed. The back door opened, light spilling onto the patio. Vanessa, hugging herself against the cold. Hey, she said, sitting on the swing beside me. Hey. So that was unexpected. I laughed, a genuine one this time. Understatement. I always thought you knew you were adopted. I found out when I was like 12. Overheard Mom and Dad talking. I just assumed you knew too. I stared at her. You knew? All this time? She nodded, looking ashamed. I didn't know Uncle Rich was your biological father though. That part's news to me too. Why didn't you ever say anything? She kicked at the ground, setting her swing in motion. I don't know. Mom made it seem like this big secret. Said it was their story to tell, not mine. And then it just never came up. Never came up, I repeated. Right. I'm sorry, she said softly. I should have said something. I just didn't want to hurt you. The same excuse our parents had used. Everyone trying to protect me from the truth, not realizing their silence was what actually caused the pain. Does it change anything? She asked after a moment. Knowing, I mean. I considered the question. Did it change who I was? Who they were to me? The years of feeling like an outsider, was that all in my head, or had there been real distance created by this unspoken secret? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. I need time to process. She nodded. For what it's worth, I never thought of you as anything but my brother. I still don't. I studied her face, so different from mine, fair where I was dark, delicate where I was solid. Not my blood, but my family nonetheless. The sister who'd annoyed me, competed with me, sometimes even resented me, but who'd never treated me like I didn't belong. Thanks, Ness. We sat in silence for a few minutes, swinging gently, our breaths mingling in the cold air. What happens now? She finally asked. I don't know that either. Are you going to try to contact Uncle Rich? The question hit me like a physical blow. Richard, my biological father. The man who'd wanted nothing to do with me. Who might have been trying to erase me from family history. Who shared my DNA but none of my life. I don't know, I said again, feeling like a broken record. Maybe. She touched my arm lightly. Whatever you decide, I'm here. Okay? This doesn't change us. But it did. It changed everything and nothing at once. The family I thought I knew had transformed into something more complicated, more fragile, more real. We should go back inside, Vanessa said. It's freezing. I nodded but didn't move. I'll be there in a minute. She squeezed my arm once more, then headed back to the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see my parents, the people who had chosen me, raised me, loved me in their imperfect way, sitting close together, waiting. There would be more conversations. Hard ones. There would be anger and hurt and eventually, perhaps, healing. There would be decisions about Richard, about the past, about the future. But for now, I just sat in the cold, letting the truth settle around me like the first snow of winter, transforming everything it touched into something new, something that looked both strange and familiar at once. I wasn't who I thought I was. But maybe, just maybe, that was okay.